It's Monday, February 5th. I'm your host, Sarah Beal. On today's show, we talk to Kristen Kibblehouse of the Cape Cod Regional STEM Network about their Winter STEM Design Challenge. Then we'll talk with Tina Crook, the Math Curriculum Coordinator at Barnstable Public Schools, about the new computer science classes being offered at BHS next year. And finally, we'll catch up with Cape and Island State Senator Julianne Sear. But first, let's get a look at today's top headlines. A new school committee member was selected at last week's town council meeting. The council and the school committee held a joint meeting to interview and select a new member to fill the slot vacated last year. Each candidate was asked the same 3 questions, and after some deliberation, a vote was taken. The choice was unanimous. Barbara Dunn will be the new school committee member. Her first meeting will be this Wednesday as the school committee meets at 7 p.m. in the town hall hearing room and begins their work on the FY19 budget. The Barnstable Police Department announced last week the appointment of Sergeant Eric Driftmeyer as the Public Information Officer. Sergeant Driftmeyer replaces longtime Public Information Officer Sergeant Sean Sweeney, who recently retired after a 34-plus year career with the police department. Sergeant Driftmeyer has been a member of the Barnstable Police Department for 24 years, has served as a field training officer, SWAT member, assistant director of the Citizens Police Academy, and the department crime analyst. A public hearing on changes to various permits and program fees that will take effect July 1st, 2018 for FY 2019 within the town of Barnstable will be held on February 13th at 10 a.m. in the town hall hearing room. Information is available on the town website at townofbarnstable.us or in the town manager's office between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. The Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission will be holding a public hearing at Town Hall tomorrow, Tuesday, February 6th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. The public hearing will focus on regulations pertaining to the adult use of marijuana, including licensing, operational requirements for cultivation, product manufacturing, retail sales, social consumption, delivery, compliance, enforcement, and administrative appeals. Speakers are requested to provide a copy of their oral testimony. The commission encourages all interested parties to submit testimony electronically to cannabiscommission@state.ma.us. Coming up, Kristen Kibblehouse with the Cape Cod Regional STEM Network. Kristen, thank you so much for coming in and joining us today. You're back again to talk about some wonderful STEM stuff. You were the STEM events coordinator at 4Cs. We're going to talk about the Winter STEM Design Challenge, Cape Cod Cardboard Challenge.
Yes.
So what can you tell us about this?
So it's an initiative that the Cape Cod Regional STEM Network does. So the Regional STEM Network is branched on to 4Cs. And so this winter we are doing a cardboard challenge. So we based the idea off of the global cardboard challenge. So it was from a little boy in California that did an arcade out of his dad's auto shop. And he did arcade games through it, and then it became this kind of global boom. A guy came in and did a documentary about it, and now we have the global cardboard challenge. So we wanted to bring that to the Cape this winter because as this week is, it's snowing.
Yes.
So if kids are out of school, they can do it, but we're also doing it for their classrooms as well.
That's wonderful. I think it's a great project to have the kids that they can work on it. It's not like they have to get it done in a weekend. It's not like, okay, here's your tools, here's your thing, go. It's, it started back in January. It's going in through March.
Yes.
And there's all sorts of information on it on the website. Tell me how people can get to that.
Yep. So if you go on our website, which is the CapeCodSTEMnetwork.org, and then go under our news and events tab, you'll see the cardboard challenge there. You can click on it. It gives you, we have resources on what kind of materials you can use. If you would like to participate, you can participate, or then if you're doing it with your classroom, you can enter in, and then we are actually doing a grand prize. So we're giving out 3 grand prizes. So if your classroom has the best design or a really good way that you've demonstrated your design process, and we have a checklist of things that we would be judging you on, and you send in a video. We are giving out 3 free field trips to the Whack and Hammer's Clockwork Arcade right here in Hyannis, and it's actually a STEM-themed arcade. So buses will be paid for, and the field trip itself.
That's so awesome. I think that's such a great incentive to get kids to think about. The kids love arcades. there's something about playing those games and trying to, and all different kinds of games. So and that's what you're looking for. I mean, some of the, the ideas in here are skee ball and like a hoop shoot and things like that. So, I mean, any arcade game that a kid can think of, I mean, there's maybe they can figure out a way to build it with cardboard and all the other materials that they're allowed to use.
Exactly, and that's why we're calling it that's why it is our design challenge, because kids might be thinking, oh, I'm just building this fun game for me to play, but you're getting that design process in there of laying out your design, measuring, you might have trial and error. If something doesn't work right, then you go back and say, well, how can I fix this? What can I do differently? And then you get your end result of having a fun game to play then as well.
That's great. There's a strong emphasis lately on STEM. What are some of the goals of the STEM network that they're trying to do by offering these kinds of programs?
So by offering these kinds of programs, we're showing people that STEM isn't just this acronym that schools use to show the initiatives that they're doing. It is interdisciplinary. Everything does work together in the show, that it can be fun and it can be done in different ways that you didn't think of. So again, like building a cardboard arcade game. People don't think that's STEM, but it is, by, like I was saying earlier, measuring, designing, thinking about your processes of how you are going to do things. And then the STEM network, to help those initiatives go through, we do help with school programs like this one. We also then help with 4Cs college students as well on their career pathways through STEM, or if they want to transfer up to a 4-year school, then helping them with their pathway on through STEM.
Wonderful. I think this is a great project and a great idea, and I hope a lot of kids out there, give it a try, because you never know, and it's all trial and error, and there's no wrong way and there's no right way. It's just, do what you can and see what you can come up with. Get your hands dirty, get some cardboard and all the other tools that you can use, and have fun.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My guest today is Kristen Kibblehouse. She's the STEM event coordinator for the Cape Cod Regional STEM Network. Coming up, Cape and Island State Senator Julianne Sear, but first, Tina Crook, the math curriculum coordinator for grades 6 to 12 with Barnstable Public Schools. Tina, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about a new pathway of classes that is going to be offered at Barnstable High School as part of a computer science program. What can you tell me about this new program?
Sure. So right now we are currently offering AP Computer Science A for students who are mostly in upperclassmen, mostly restricted just to seniors right now, just because of limited use and not limited use, but limited accessibility in the student schedule. So what we're going to do is we're going to, through Project Lead the Way, we're offering students beginning in 9th grade a pathway to computer science programming. The first year, next year, we're opening up to grades 9 and 10, and they would be taking Computer Science Essentials. And that is really the introductory course that allows them access to this pathway. Each year, we will add another course as we roll out this program to students. And students will have the opportunity to take 4 computer sciences, 2 of them AP.
Wow, that's amazing. And one of the ways that you're able to offer these classes is because of the schedule at the high school is expanding. So now instead of 6 classes, it'll be 7.
Absolutely. So right now, like I had said, the AP Computer Science A, we have about 25 students who take that course, mostly seniors, might be a couple juniors in there. So by students having that access to an additional course, they can take more electives. So this class, though the math department, it's housed in the math department, it's not one of the math requirements for Mass Core graduation requirements. So the students still have to take their Algebra 1,
Right.
Geometry, Algebra 2, but it is an elective that we offer in the math department.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, really excited about it.
Is this the first elective within the math department, or do you have others?
Actually, that's a really good question. We do have some new semester courses being offered. We have puzzles and paradoxes. We have mathematical modeling, and then we have statistics. And some of those classes students can take for credit or just as electives. And we have SAT prep as well that we're going to be rolling in for next year.
Wow, that's
so.
great.
Yeah.
What are some of the computer science things that the students will be learning in this first course that's going to be offered? And this will be available for them to take this coming fall, correct?
Exactly. So 9th and 10th graders will get exposure to like the fundamentals of maybe some coding, a little bit of web design, etc. That will then lead them to the computer science principles AP. So as a 9th or 10th grader, they can take the essentials. Then 10th or 11th grader, they can take the AP computer science principles. And then they can split into 2 different paths. They can senior year take AP computer science A or cybersecurity. So they're working on that program right now, the cybersecurity, and by the time we're fully implemented, that course will be available to students.
Wow, I know that's an emerging kind of computer-based job opportunity.
Absolutely.
I know they just started, they have a cybersecurity course at 4Cs, so this will be a great kind of feeder program into that.
Right, and another, there's a couple little pathways that we have going. So students at the high school can take Project Lead the Way engineering courses and or computer science, and they actually meet in the middle. And through that, and with AP and Project Lead the Way, they can get college credit for schools for the coursework that they do. So one brief little data statistic, in 2015, there were approximately 57,000 computer science graduates from college, and there were 550,000 jobs available.
Wow.
So it's like 8 times as many jobs available that there are students with that degree. So really, really many opportunities for students, entering this program.
Yeah, computers are definitely not going anywhere. They're just advancing year after year after
year.
It's
just maintaining and keeping up with the changes with it.
So if a student has like that knack for that kind of thing, this is going to be a great pathway for them to really focus on that. Would you say that the students should have some, I mean, most kids these days do have, they probably know computers better than you and I,
right.
But should they definitely have a strong interest in it, or would you say it's a great course to take if you're just, checking things out?
Absolutely, either way. I mean, I think that even if a student thinks they have interest in it, the only prerequisite is that they have completed pre-algebra, because there are some algebraic reasoning in some of the program writing. So that's why we put it in the 9th grade, because we want kids exposed to it as early as possible.
Wonderful. It sounds like such a great program. I'm so excited that this is coming to Barnstable High School next year, and thank you so much for telling us about it.
Thank you for having me.
Great. My guest today is Tina Crook. She's the math curriculum coordinator for grades 6 through 12 in Barnstable Public Schools. Julianne, thank you so much for joining us today. We have a couple things that we want to talk about. First thing I want to bring up is the retail task force. There was a kind of like a tour, I think it was last week. What can you tell me about this?
Glad to be with you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So this is a special task force that the Senate President appointed earlier this year for the Senate and various stakeholders to take a really deep dive to some of the issues and challenges that are facing all of our retailers across the Commonwealth. So yes, that's bigger retailers, but more importantly and more germane to the Cape, our sort of small mom and pop Main Street stores. There's a whole host of things that have been changing in the retail environment. I think the most obvious one, right, is the emergence of online shopping, but certainly a whole host of other concerns. And so I was asked to be appointed to this panel. Given my real background as someone who grew up in a small business, in a retail establishment, a restaurant. And so what we did, we've been having several hearings in Boston, and then we've been doing a tour across the state. And so I hosted a visit last week with several senators, in addition to stakeholders from the retail and workforce industries. So first we were in Harwichport, and had a working lunch at Land Ho there, did a tour of Harwichport, and then came to Main Street Hyannis as well, and had a listening session, did a tour as well. So really received some valuable feedback from folks in the retail industry on the concerns that they're experiencing.
What would you say? What were the main concerns that the local retailers were said that they had?
So overall, I think attracting workforce, retaining workforce, and housing are two big themes that we hear time and again. I think also heard from folks about sort of sometimes the unintended consequences of programs that are meant to really help workers and employees, and the implementation cost of those. Some feedback as well around sales tax, around how do you level the playing field. So and then I think specific to the Cape, really the seasonality that we have. And so there's a lot of conversation, led by folks like Wendy Northcross of the Cape Cod Chamber about, how do you extend that season? How do we promote tourism? A lot of the retail that we have is actually through folks who come and visit our communities either for a few days or a week or stay the summer. That's really important from retailers. Heard from folks, like Amanda Converse from Live Local and a local store owner as well on Main Street Hyannis, about how do you really support young folks who want to start off and open their own businesses. Really want to thank Felice at Alberto's for hosting us in Hyannis, as well as Elizabeth Worth Main and others who've been really working to, I think, improve things on Main Street. So that's some of the feedback that we've received. We're now going to be heading to out west to Northampton and to Western Massachusetts next Monday for another series in the listening session, and we're hoping to have a report by the end of June.
Wonderful. I think it's such a great, I'm so glad to hear that you're a part of this committee, because it is a huge problem here on Cape Cod. Is, the local retail establishments, the seasonal workers, it's, they need more workers in the summertime, but that's the time of year that it's really hard to find housing, because all of, these winter rentals turn into summer rentals, and they're only rented on a week-by-week basis. So you need more workers, but where can we put them? So,
yeah, small business is the bread and butter of our economy on the Cape.
It's when a lot of people make their money to make their business work throughout the entire year.
And I think it's gotten harder and harder to own and maintain a business in the region. Another topic we talked about was this concept of employee ownership. So, when someone's looking to, you've had a business for a few years or a few decades, you're looking to sell or get out. My family was in this position with our restaurant. There's actually some really favorable provisions, some tax provisions for employers who sell to their employees. And I think that this is a policy and a program. It's been around for a while. It was actually implemented under tax reform during the Reagan administration, so quite some time ago. But a lot of folks haven't been taking advantage of it. So we spent some time talking to businesses, and especially to retailers about, about this program. Or rather, it's not a program; it's a series of incentives. Because I think, if you look at if you just look at the books of our retailers in the region, they can help people support a good living, but often, increasingly, the most valuable part of the business happens to be the real estate. And we want to make sure these businesses are continued, right? We want local shops, we want local restaurants, we want to be able to continue that. So another thing we talked about was this employee ownership program that might really help continue some of the kind of keystone businesses that we have in our communities and our downtowns.
Wonderful. I could look forward to chatting with you again in a couple months once the task force has kind of put together their presentation on what they found.
Absolutely.
The next thing we want to talk about is the Women's March that happened in Hyannis, and you were able to attend this. How did the event go? I wish I was able to attend myself, but I wasn't.
It was pretty inspiring. I've never seen that many people gather on Cape Cod. I think the crowd estimates were somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 people. Wow. A lot of women, but also a few good men. I was really honored. I was one of the very few men who spoke, and I spoke really briefly, and was really honored to do so. This was an event planned by women, about women. And what I essentially did is I said, look, we need women in our public life now more than ever, and asked women in the crowd to give their time to run for office, to serve in local positions. And actually the following weekend, this past weekend, we actually had a candidate training and had 30 people who showed up for that, many of whom had attended the Women's March. These are people who I had never met before. And so I think really inspiring to see how engaged our community is. And I think that folks of all stripes really turning out And I think on one end, yes, really rejecting, I think, this very toxic, hateful rhetoric that we have at the national level, but also really coming together in a very collaborative way to say, all right, how do we make our little piece of the world here on Cape Cod a little better? And that's pretty inspiring.
That's wonderful. Anytime somebody wants to get involved in their community, I think is a positive thing.
Absolutely. And one thing that we do, if you go to senatorsear.com, we keep just a listing of all the vacancies, or most all the vacancies that we have across all the 20 towns that I represent. Mm-hmm. So, if you are someone who is maybe anxiously watching watching cable news and you need an outlet, there's plenty of places. We need good people. And this is not partisan stuff, right? Serving on the planning boards, the boards of health,
right.
Helping to support people. I actually headed over to Nantucket. Nantucket also had a Women's March, too, that I was able to attend that same day, and about 200 folks showed up for that. So it was one of those. It was a pretty inspiring day.
Wonderful. Well, Julianne, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today. I really appreciate it and look forward to chatting with you again in a couple weeks.
Always a pleasure. Look forward to being back.
Oh,
Thanks,
great.
Sarah. Take care.
You too. Bye. My guest today was Cape and Island State Senator Julianne Sear. Now let's take a look at this week's community calendar. The Barnstable Senior Center is celebrating Black History Month with a series of programs highlighting the achievements and accomplishments of African Americans and recognizing their roles in U.S. history and on Cape Cod. This series is sponsored by the Zion Union Heritage Museum. The series will feature the film Journey into the Light with John Reed, Carl Lopes, Icons of Civil Rights with David, and Robin J. Miller, poet, artist, and author. Events are taking place throughout the month. You can contact the Senior Center at 508-862-4750 for more information. The Senior Center will also be hosting an author talk on Tuesday, February 6th at 2 p.m. The book, I Am of Cape Cod, People and Their Stories, is the first book to celebrate the ordinary people, natives, and washashores who make their lives on Cape Cod and the special connection that they feel with the region. Author John Whalen and photographer Kim Rodriguez drove the length and breadth of Cape Cod to all 15 towns, from Provincetown to Sandwich, to interview and photograph the 139 individuals that appear on these pages. Join John Whalen as he talks about the journey of how this book came about and the incredible people he met along the way. You can RSVP to the Senior Center by calling 508-862-4750. Now let's take a look at this week's Board, Committee, and Commission schedule. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow with an all-new show. On Tuesday's show, we'll talk to Planning and Development Director Elizabeth Jenkins, Director of Senior Services Madeline Noonan, and DPW Director Dan Santos. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Beal.